on, Los Angeles? Welcome into the Rams Skinny here on the LA Football Network, live on the Mightier 1090 ESPN Radio. Thank you for making us a part of your day. Happy Friday to all. It is Christmas weekend. It's a beautiful weekend, especially because it's a victory Friday for our Los Angeles Rams after a big Thursday night primetime win over the New Orleans Saints. We're going to get all up in it and talk about this game as the Rams move to 8-7, and I believe up into the 6th seed in the playoff race, which is very, very impressive for this team. But joining me as always, my better half, the man with the great mane, the beautiful jackets, the good stubble, the great smile, Ryan Skinny T. Anderson. What's up, brother? How we doing?
I'm doing good. Have you noticed, how beautiful, speaking of nice smiles, how beautiful Matthew Stafford's teeth are? They're just glistening white, just beautiful. They got to be veneers. I don't know. Those got to be nice to be natural.
There's got to be an LA dentist that he should be giving a shout out to, like on all, ESPN radio, we have like Dr. Clapper and all these different LA legends, Barry, the lawyer, go to Barry to get your settlement. There's got to be some dentist that Matthew Stafford can shout out, because those are a great set of choppers for sure.
Yeah, definitely. But I've, speaking of the season, I've started my eggnog binge. Given eggnog's just high caloric and, just sugar amount, I give myself just a week of eggnog drinking with some brandy or some bourbon. But I've started into that. I've dug into it. And so that's the official, like, we're in the deep heart of Christmas spirit when sipping eggnog, watching National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. It's perfect. It's perfection.
Just delightful. Do you throw the little candy cane in there too?
I don't. No, a little brandy, a little eggnog, maybe a little extra seasoning on there to spice it up a little bit.
A little nutmeg or cinnamon. Yeah. I like the homemade ones like that. But if you want a nice premix, anyone out there listening, go to Costco. They have a great premixed eggnog that I believe is premixed with brandy. But it's phenomenal. It's just kind of like their margarita, right? Like everyone talks about the Costco margarita. The Costco eggnog is not bad either. Yeah. So, but you're like you work in the liquor. You got to make your own, obviously.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
Before we get into this game, big win, 30-22, 8-point win for the Rams. Show is always brought to you by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. Head to UnderdogFantasy.com or Underdog Fantasy on the App Store or Google Play. When you enter your first deposit, use our promo code RAMSLAFB. That's one word, RAMSLAFB. You're going to get a match deposit up to $100. You put in $100, they're going to give you $100 free to play with. That's Underdog Fantasy. RAMSLAFB is the promo code. You can find the link in the description below as well. Tell them the guys at the Rams Skinny sent you here on the LA Football Network. So Skinny T, 8-7, 6th seed in the playoffs. Overall, I thought a pretty dominant performance. We'll get into, obviously, the defense kind of, similar to last week, letting them a little back in it, which was a little concerning. Another missed field goal, a little concerning. Some red zone woes, a little concerning. But overall, I would say 80% of the product is looking pretty dang good for this Rams team. What's your 3,000-foot lens view of this victory on Thursday?
This is the kind of game that differentiated the Rams between other 7-7 teams in the league. They just moved the ball on offense with impunity. They just looked like they could not be stopped. Didn't look like the Saints had an answer on defense for what Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford were showing them. And this is what we wanted to see. I keep saying it. I was saying it from the beginning. They got to be scoring 30 points a game, and they're doing that now. And it's the right time that they're doing that, heading into the playoffs at the 6th seed, currently slated to play the Lions. Everybody knows the ties that bind between these two teams, and we're heading into a week where they're playing another NFC opponent that is a beatable team. You kind of alluded to, the end of the game where they let teams sneak back in. But other than that, just an offensive juggernaut showing from the Rams and another defensive performance that was great. And I want to talk more about Raheem Morris. And we were talking about putting respect on Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay, top end head coaching candidate. I think Raheem Morris, and we can get more into the defense when we get there. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, yeah. I'll say that for at the end of my little soapbox here, or whatever you want to call it. But overall, please. I mean, at one point, it was what 27-7 or something like that. It's all blurring together. I was at a hockey game last night as well. Nice little Christmas gift from the parents, but they were up big, and obviously they kind of let them back in it, which you don't want to see. And we talked about it last week in the Commanders game that, against playoff opponents, that's, you can't let that happen, but it's the NFL. There's still NFL teams. The Saints are on the cusp of a playoff. They're playing for everything. So, it's as long as you at the end of the day finish the job and get the job done, that's all that really matters. But overall, I thought, this team here's what I'll say. So I thought it was a good win. Or a great win, I should say. This is a Saints defense that hadn't given up like a touchdown or so in 2 games. Granted, they played some pretty weak offenses, but I think we saw how good this Rams offense is, as you alluded to, just moving the ball with impunity, as you said. Great adjective to describe, or verb, however you want to use it. We're seeing before our eyes, like we talked at length last episode about McVay and put some respect on him and the Picasso of the NFL in terms of coaching in 2023. But I think Matthew Stafford should have a case for MVP as well. He won't get it. And, there's some other very deserving players as well. But where he is putting together an MVP type performance, especially after the bye week. Now, granted, it's got to be the full season, but in these last, 4 or 5 weeks since the bye, it is incredible what he has been doing. 1,300 yards, 12 touchdowns, 1 pick, I think. Correct me if I have something off there a little bit. I don't have it in front of me, but I know that's close to what it is. And he's just leading this team well and playing so well at such a high level at such an important time that it is just fun to watch. And the other thing I'll say, and maybe this goes into a larger conversation here, is everyone's talked about this remodel. And we talked about the pillars that we have: Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald. And then you sprinkle in some other good key players, and Ernest Jones having a fantastic year. Jordan Fuller, after I feel like I praised him a few weeks ago, calling him the best safety in Los Angeles, has struggled the last 2 or 3 weeks. Had another bad play last night where he cheated up and obviously gave up the touchdown to make it a closer game. But, he's another one in that list. And you can look at, Rob Havenstein on the offensive line, yada, yada, and then how they drafted and whatnot. What's been so impressive, and this is what the great teams are able to do, and there's not a lot of them that do it, because you see these mini dynasties where it's like, 3 to 5 years of good runs and then kind of a 3 to 5 years lull, and then they get back to the top. Like what we saw with the Patriots will probably never happen again. 20 years of dominance. That's just not going to happen. But what they were able to do in that is they had their core, or not even really their core. They had Tom Brady, and then they basically, they had their pillar, one pillar, maybe we could argue. And then they were able to find those new pillars every 3 to 5 years that just kept going up. And then some of those guys, obviously Gronk became a true pillar and whatnot. And you look at the Rams, obviously Donald, Kupp, and Stafford are still the pillars, but now we're seeing before our eyes, Kyren Williams and Puka Nacua are truly 2 pillars on offense. Ernest Jones, we allude to, truly a pillar on defense. Kobie Turner, you could argue, is becoming a pillar on the defensive line. So it's so rare that teams are able to do that. And the way these guys are playing, the way they're leading as young guys, the amount of fun they're having that we saw in the interview afterwards, after the game with Kyren Williams and Puka Nacua, and just smiling ear to ear, talking about fun. And obviously when you win, it's fun. But that was something Sean McVay talked about. I'm getting long-winded here. But when he talked about coming back, I remember he mentioned 2 things because of the whole retirement and all this stuff. And the 2 things he alluded to was, one, I don't want to come back if I don't feel like I can lead these men to be better than they are in football and off the field. That was really important to him, and I love that about him. We talked about it. Super awesome to hear a coach say that is important. And the other thing was, like, I don't want to come back if it's not fun to do anymore. And you see it on all levels of this team, from the practice squad to the rookies to the stars to the coaching staff to the front office. Everyone is just coaching, playing, practicing with the purpose of having fun. And I think we talked about this in like July. Like when you have fun, it becomes loose and you turn those fun into wins. And we saw that at the very end of last season a little bit with Baker Mania. And now this whole season, obviously, you have 7 losses, but they haven't got away from that. And I think that's super important. And those pillars that they've found early on are just going to carry that on forward into the future. And this team is good right now, but everybody better watch out in 24 and 25 because they got a lot of ammo to even get even better. So the fact that they're doing this in this season is just so impressive.
Yeah. And the interview after the game was the only word I can describe it as is adorable.
Yes, nice.
They were just so happy to be. It looked like they were just happy to be on TV and happy to win a football game. And Kyren Williams was talking about he likes being out there playing football with his friends. And it's just like it's like
love that.
That's great. Like what that signals is a changing of the guard. Where as much as Cooper Kupp has looked more like himself, he's still coming up hobbled. He's not fully healthy. He's on the back side of his career last couple of years, I'm guessing, of prime Cooper Kupp play. And then, behind him in terms of weapons, of offensive weapons, there just wasn't a lot of other established guys in there. Now you got Kyren and you got Puka in there. And it makes me think of like what you were saying about kind of like how, dynasties kind of come and go really quickly. And it made me think of the Golden State Warriors and just their attempts to find the next Steph and Clay, or the next Draymond that's going to come in and extend their dynasty into the next strata. And they just haven't really been able to do that. But then you got these two guys that are just happy to be up there, Kyren and Puka, just talking about what a blessing it is to be playing football with this team. And it's and playing at the level that they're doing. And, we're obviously gushing about those two guys, but what this offensive line has done as well has been phenomenal. Kyren Williams has 3.3 yards before contact, which ties him for the second best in football among running backs. And the leader's only 0.1 yards ahead of him. So what that means is, this offensive line is just doing its job in the running game and giving him space to do what he needs to be able to do. And they're keeping Stafford upright. And, there's so many games where he gets tagged and just comes up wincing, and we saw him, miss a game just because he was injured. But and then you look back at after the series of losses and the conversations that we were having after those games of like, should they just pack it in for the rest of the season, rest Cooper Kupp and Stafford for the next season? And you and I both agreed that would be devastating for these rookies and for these young guys, including Kyren Williams, where what they're doing is they're learning a winning behaviors. They're learning winning culture. They're learning the Rams culture.
100%.
And they're building confidence. And that's why you don't pack it in at this point, because guess what? They've gone on this run now where they're now in the playoffs, and those guys get some experience in the playoffs. Now, I said it last week, this is a playoff team. They're better than the competition that they're facing. They're better than the Saints. Obviously they just, they did a great job just, wiping the table with the Saints all game long for most of the game anyway. But, and they're better than the Giants, and they're the Saints may be the worst 7-7 team coming into this game, and then the Rams were just so much better than that. The record doesn't really reflect how good they're playing right now, and it's so important for these young guys to just get this experience of stacking blocks, as Sean McVay likes to say.
Yeah, well, and something else we talked about with the youth, right, is you have that kind of, like, you don't know, how do I say this? We talked about it in the offseason, but it's like this almost dumb confidence where you haven't been in the league yet. You're a rookie or a second-year guy or first-time starter, and so you don't know really what you're up against. You're just like, I'm just going to go out and ball and have a good time. And like when you're a vet, you've lost a bunch or you've lost some, and like, oh, wow, this team is going to be a juggernaut to go up against. Like, how do we do this? And so you get in your own head sometimes. You try as a vet not to, but sometimes as a rookie, and when you see, the great Cinderella stories of all time, like we think of Miracle on Ice, like they may have played Russia 20 times, and the quote in the movie is, played them 10 times. We may lose 9, but not this time. And that kind of has this feeling of this Rams team. In a way, I think they're playing much better than that. But it kind of is that dumb confidence where it's just like, hey, we're just going to go and just put our heart out and see what we can do. And we're going to make some mistakes, but we're going to just keep clawing and fighting. And I think what's good about this team, what it should have Rams fans excited, is week after week now during this little mini run they've been on, minus the Baltimore loss, is they've been getting a little bit more consistent. Every week there's some stuff where we're like, oh man, there's the youth, there's the experience you see, but the consistency is starting to get better. Now let's though shift a little bit, Skinny, and we'll talk a little bit negative because, you know, you wrote your article right after the game. Go to LAFBnetwork.com to check that out, obviously, about kind of the red zone woes. So what do you think, or what do you attribute to kind of the red zone where they move the ball so well, and even on the first drive, it took a 4th down conversion to not settle for a field goal. And then they had to settle for a field goal the drive after that, and then missed a field goal later and whatnot. So do you attribute it as it's just, you know, the red zone's hard? It's what a lot of teams struggle with. It's less field to work with. Do you think it's play calling? What do you kind of think this red zone woes is? And do you think they can get it fixed over the next 2 weeks?
Well, I can't remember exactly what game it was, but the Rams came into the game. They ran 9 straight plays and then tried throwing 3 straight times.
That was against Baltimore. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, it's, you know, take the, you know, you bring the girl to the dance, you know,
better dance with her.
Let's dance with her, you know, like keep running those plays. And, you know, it was a passing play that worked on 4th down there. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't call passing plays, but it goes back to what I was saying about those 3.3 yards. So the analytics say, if you're in basically a 4th and goal situation anywhere within the 8-yard line, basically, you should be going for it. Now, if Kyren Williams is getting 3.3 yards per run before contact, even, that's a good play to run inside. And we saw it in this game where he ran for 10 yards in the red zone and just punched it in. And he was basically like, there was not a player in position to tackle him. Now there's a lot of things that go into that. That play doesn't exist in a vacuum where you just call that play and it's going to work every time. It's everything set it up, but you just got to set things up properly and running running the ball, you reduce the risk of an incomplete pass. So, you know, I think, you know, McVay is just a conservative play caller. He doesn't go for it enough on 4th down. And I wrote in my article, you know, he's a conservative guy, but he's also a fantastic offensive mind and play caller. Go with this one. Go with the play calling.
Yeah.
You know, he's got, you know, we've seen it with his back against the wall. His play calling has been phenomenal, where he's, you know, set up 2-minute drives. You know, even in the Commanders game or the Saints game, they drove down with just a little bit of time left on the clock before the half, and they were able to score then. And so, you know, it's a harder thing to do, but this is what the good teams do, is they put up 7 instead of 3. You know, if you have a chance to put up 8 if you want to, if you're in the red zone, and you just have to you have to take advantage of those opportunities. And I'm not saying that against the Commanders or the Saints necessarily. They won those games, but when you're going up against the Niners or the Lions or you know, the Eagles, you know, in the playoffs, it's just going to be a lot harder, and you're going to have to get those points, and it's non-negotiable at that point. And Lucas Haversick is continuing to miss kicks. You know, settling for field goals isn't automatic. You know, he missed the 33-yard extra point a couple weeks ago, and it's, you know, then you're going from scoring 7 to 0, and that drive is just worth nothing. You know, so it's a small bone to pick, but you know, that's when high leverage situations, that's what football games are won and lost. So go for it. Just be aggressive. If it's 4th and 3, call a play. And if you don't get it, that team is just backed up against their own goal line and have a much harder time, you know, creating a scoring play, much less, you know, even getting out of the shadow of their own goalpost. It's just, you know, as modern football as McVay likes to play, that's just one of those things where it's just like he can't get out of his own way, and you know, it is execution and it is play calling. It's both of those things. And you know, in this game, I'm not saying that it was a play calling mistake necessarily, but an execution mistake more so probably. But you got to set your guys up for success, and you got to bet on yourself. You know, you got to bet on yourself to put it in those instances. And you know, it's just it's an overall frustration with McVay of not betting on things that, you know, bet on your team being a physical team, you know?
Oh, 100%. And, it's such a, it's a catch-22, right? Because obviously you do all that work to get down there. I agree with everything you're saying. Like, bet on yourself, like, be aggressive. They did it the first drive and they converted on the fourth down and got the touchdown on a nice play design there. But then you see on the second drive, they kicked the field goal. Had they not kicked that field goal, and at the end of the game, it's only a 5-point game instead of an 8-point game. Obviously, they didn't get the onside kick, but maybe that changes things. So it's such a hard thing to really quantify in a vacuum. Obviously, 100% of the time, you want a touchdown. But it's like, when is right to be aggressive? When is right just to take the points? And I am more on the side of with you. Like, I just want to be aggressive all the time. But some of the old school people, especially in the media, are like, just take the points. Like, I've sat in so many press boxes, like, what are we doing here? Like, going for it again, like, kick the field goal, take the points.
Yeah, no, and it's such an interesting point. But then you look at a few games this year, one score games, where 7 would have actually won the game. You think about the Bengals game, or you think about the Pittsburgh game. I think both of those, the first score from the Rams were both field goals, and I don't remember if those were particularly on the first drive necessarily, but that's when Sean McVay is scripting those plays. That's when he's supposed to be at his best, and that's what I just wanted at that point. I just had the Rams won one or both of those games against Cincinnati or Pittsburgh, they're already in the playoffs. They're already locked in, and they're in a much better place. So, it's I understand the philosophy of picking up getting the points against the Saints and the Commanders, but what I'm worried about is, do they do that against do they go into week 17, week 18 when everything's on the line against the Niners and they settle for a field goal and end up losing by 4? It's like,
no, and that's when you do have to have that aggression, because the way the Niners are playing and the way that offense is moving the ball, like, you can't leave points. And I get, if you don't convert, you leave 3 points on the field, but I don't think you're going to beat that Niners team, 17-14. It's probably going to end up being a shootout. It could not be. I mean, you never know with a division inter rival game what those look like. So because we brought it up, let's mention the kicking game. Another missed field goal for Havenstein. Based on what McVay said after the game, it sounds like they're rolling the dice with him the rest of the way. I mean, unless he has a 0 for game coming up, I mean, he's probably going to be the Rams kicker through the rest of these 2 games and potentially going into the playoffs. So your thoughts, is it, I mean, kicking is so much confidence. It's not like these guys can't kick, right? Like, there's 200 kickers in college. That's all they do. They don't practice anything else. Once you're in college, you literally just kick for 3 hours a day. Most of it, obviously, there's some leg talent and leg strength that separate the great ones from the, okay journeyman ones. But in reality, the biggest thing is confidence. So is this a play of McVay saying, like, all right, we've seen him in practice, he has the leg strength, it's all about confidence with him, we're putting all of our chips in on him and saying, you're our guy? Or is this a pretty dumb move by McVay when you have Mason Crosby that's been doing it forever, that from probably 40 yards in, he's almost a guarantee, he's obviously not going to have the leg strength from 50 plus? What do you think? Should they be rolling with that? Or do you think it's just like, hey, what do we got with Havenstein?
Man, I don't know. I'd be bringing in people, trying things out. Yeah, I mean, I've said it before. It's just like this: if Havenstein misses a field goal in the postseason, and that's what the exit point is for the Rams, it's just like, you got to reevaluate your position on special teams at that point. It seemed like it, for most of McVay's career, it seemed like an afterthought, and it's a big part of the game, and you have to get the guy. So I'd keep looking for the guy until you find the guy. I would bet on Mason Crosby more than I would bet on Havenstein for sure at this point.
I
mean,
I know it's interesting. Like, when I heard that, and another missed kick, and it didn't come back to bite
at the end of the game.
What?
There's a block punt at the end of the game as well that set up a touchdown. But yeah,
that's true. So yeah, I mean, it's just a situation that you don't want to go into the playoffs with such shaky special teams, because as a unit, the special teams unit, I think, has been really good this year in terms of tackling and field position, and the punting with the rookie punter has been great. But that everyone forgets how important the field goal kicker is until you miss one. And then everyone's like, oh my gosh, like what is going on? The sky is falling.
You got one job.
That's it.
Get your head
One
right.
job.
Get in there. Figure out your confidence.
I've never understood Skinny. Never understood. Like, I'm not saying kicking is easy. It's a small window you got to hit. You're kicking a weird shaped football. You got to hit the right spot. But that is literally all you do every day, 365, is kick footballs. And the amount of not good kickers, like I get, like it's hard to be perfect. I'm not saying that. But the fact that we have in the NFL still to this day, like of 32 teams, we have probably 3 elite kickers, probably 10 good kickers, and the rest are all like, well, we'll probably just find a new one next year again. Like, it's shocking to me. And there's 200 every year in college. Like, how is there not 32 really good kickers? I don't get it.
And most of the college kickers, it doesn't seem like nobody's drafting kickers, and even when they do, it doesn't seem like it's a winner. Obviously it's not an easy thing to do, but if it's a confidence thing, like have your cell phone on the side and like have your mom call you up and just talk you up. I don't know, have somebody give you a phone call, pay somebody to give you a call and just talk you up and get your head in the game. I don't know what these guys need.
If you're a soccer player, it's way more exciting. Like, it's more fun playing soccer than being a football field goal kicker. But if you're not good enough to make it to like Premier League where you're making like crazy money, if you're like an MLS player where you might be making like, 800,000, 900,000, like a bottom tier. Obviously there's some MLS guys that make a lot. So I'm not saying that, but if you're one of those bottom guys, why would you not just say, you know what? There's not very many good field goal kickers. I'm just going to go do that. Get to just ride the pine all the time, hang out, like just, shoot the S on practice days. And if I'm a good kicker, I'll make $3-4 million a year. I mean, that's why the Rams couldn't keep Matt Gay, because the Colts gave him $4 million.
That's it. That's all he needed. Come on.
$4 million. Like, come on. There's got to be some soccer players out there willing to go play in the NFL for $4 million.
Kroenke's got $4 million in his couch cushions right now.
Yeah. Come on. That's the other thing. Maybe kickers shouldn't count against the cap. Maybe that would make the kicking game better. If you take out the punter and kicker, take them out of the cap, maybe that would make it a better situation.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. What do I know?
The backup quarterback too shouldn't be in there.
Yeah, exactly. For sure. I mean, I was on another show, and we're getting off topic here. I was on another show where I think the way you solve, because obviously this year we're seeing an unbelievable amount of QBs injured. And when the backups go in, it's like, man, the good play just erodes so much. Or it also shows the teams that actually put a value on backup quarterbacks. And so what I was saying is like, okay, similar to kickers. Like, we have so many quarterbacks that play in college and this. And again, it's the hardest position in all of sports to play. There's only going to be a handful of elite ones. There's only going to be a handful of guys that can be like the starting quality in the NFL. But you're telling me after 32 guys, there's not 32 more that it can at least be competent? Like, the amount of bad backup play. And so my thought was, I love that they made the rule change that the third QB doesn't count against the active roster. You can have that as emergency. But I was saying you expand. So the practice squad now is the 16 guys. You make it 18 guys, but those final 2 have to be quarterbacks. So you have 2 quarterbacks plus your 3. So you essentially have 5 quarterbacks in your roster. And those 2 practice squad, it's just a development. You bring in another coach that maybe is like a side private coach that all he's doing is developing these quarterbacks, because there is no way, with how many guys play football, how many quarterbacks we have in the college game, that there's not at least 64 decent quarterbacks in football. Sorry, I was getting animated and had to hit my mic there.
Yeah, I would even want to take it a step further, and this will never happen because the college ranks just fill up the NFL, but having the developmental league where they are getting practice reps and live reps in actual games, maybe not necessarily in Europe like they tried, but I would, we're way off topic here, but I would love to see an NFL developmental league where, quarterbacks are able to play in a spring situation or something like that, and get developed and turn into Kurt Warner or whatever.
Yeah, we're hearing it's pretty close that this USFL XFL merger happens, and in the talks with the merger is that would become a developmental league for the NFL, which just makes so much more sense. Like, don't compete against it, make it all one entity that you send guys there. They get to play all spring. They get paid to do it, and they show up at training camp having those reps. And yeah, so I mean, that alone, I think, make things better. But anyway, let's get back to the Rams here for the final 10 minutes or so of the show. Let's talk defense real quick. We saw a shift this week. Less Derion Kendrick, probably much to the happiness of fans. A lot more Cobie Durant in there. Had his struggles overall, had that given up touchdown. But overall, what was your assessment of Cobie Durant, who I think a lot of people have been really wanting to see get more reps?
Yeah, he's the better player of the two. And it just goes to show you that they still need to add guys to this back half. I mean, Akhello Witherspoon has done a fine job back there, but we've seen a bit of regression from him. We've seen other guys take step back, other guys take step forwards, but I feel like Cobie's trajectory has been mostly on the upward trajectory of getting better. He's kind of playing inside, and they're different. They're very different positions. They're different skill sets, and he's mostly been inside and switched to outside. That's not an easy thing to do. So I commend him on the effort that he has made. And we've also seen Quentin Lake kind of moving more toward cornerback play, and he's been really good in that. So yeah, I think.
Sorry. No, I didn't want to interrupt you, but just really quick. Quentin Lake, 45 coverage snaps last night, and PFF gave him an 89.2 grade. So Quentin Lake is playing some really good ball right now.
Yeah, and fantastic to see a UCLA guy there, Carnell Lake's kid lineage. And it shows you that this defense is, and particularly the secondary is, while they've had some very excellent play and while they've had good enough play, it's still an evolving group. And they're going to add more through the draft and probably through free agency, I would imagine, heading into the 2024 season. But I think Cobie Durant is going to be a part of that plan. I don't know if Derion Kendrick is necessarily going to be a starter in 2024, but a good piece that they can rotate in. I commend that. And, a big shift has been Ernest Jones coming more to the line of scrimmage, which doesn't make it any easier on those guys playing in the secondary. He's Ernest Jones had 1 sack heading into this season. He's got 5 so far in 2023, and just doing a bang up job. 43. He's been in on 43 blitz plays. And we're really seeing Raheem Morris kind of putting his thumbprint. He's having trouble getting pressure on the edges. Let's bring Ernest Jones, which is funny because that's exactly what I wanted to see from Bobby Wagner last year, but they didn't pull the trigger on that so much.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the secondary?
Yeah, it's a work in progress, right? Like we knew that was going to be probably the weakness of the defense based on the age. I mean, you go after the draft and you're like, who is starting in the secondary after you get rid of Jalen Ramsey and you don't use a high pick for a secondary guy. You wait to the later rounds. And obviously they knocked out of the park with who they drafted early before that. So I'm not saying that was a bad thing. And they sign Akhello Witherspoon like in training camp. Like, okay, well, I guess he's coming in automatically. And they bring John Johnson back, who's more obviously a safety, but to be in there. And so it's like, okay, what are they going to do? And I think they've played very well, all things considered. They're definitely a ways off, but they've played some really talented receiving corps. It's not like they're playing nobodies, and they've played well against them. They've had their moments, obviously, in struggles, and we saw it last week with Derion Kendrick really kind of collapsing late in that game, and he's had that, unfortunately, kind of throughout the season here and there. But I think based on the talent level, based on the experience, it's just an inconsistent group is what it really is. I think they're playing good here and there, good spottingly. It's not a group at this point you can like rely on to shut down a core, but if that front seven keeps getting pressure like they're getting, which again wasn't expected either, and the emergence of Kobie Turner and what he's been able to do, and as you alluded to, using these fun stunt packages from the backers to get Ernest Jones in there and others, then it takes the pressure off of your secondary. So, and then that coupled with, as you mentioned, Quentin Lake kind of moving more and playing some slot back and different things besides just safety. Russ Yeast has been playing well at safety, had, a little bit of a rough game last night, but overall I think played pretty well. And then, the rotation they're having with him and John Johnson and Jordan Fuller, they at least have some good depth there. They don't have like a true like star outside of Jordan Fuller when he's playing up to his potential, but they're playing at least well. It's just the consistency thing that's the issue. And so we'll have to see if, over the next, 2 weeks, they don't get the biggest tests in terms of receiving core, going against Tommy DeVito and that Giants pretty weak receiving core. But go ahead.
well, this is an interesting example of how football works. And, you start moving everything forward. You mentioned it earlier with Jordan Fuller also playing a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage, Ernest Jones playing closer to the line of scrimmage. What we've seen is teams attacking the Rams defense over the top. And they've had a lot of success with that. You think about Baltimore, you think about all the, I think every scoring play by the Saints was just kind of this bomb down the field, and they just Olave or whomever just kind of beat their guy, and
Washington as well with Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel.
Well, and Jacoby, if you have a backup quarterback that you want to test, send him in against the Rams, apparently, because Joe Flacco and Jacoby Brissett comes in and light him up. But that's the problem when you start bringing people down. You just have a disadvantage in the back end, which is the whole Vic Fangio, Staley. We can't call it the Staley defense anymore now that he's dishonored. But the Vic Fangio defenses, that backstop isn't there, and that's what Jordan Fuller is really great at, is kind of figuring out those coverages. And so that's just how football works. You open yourself up to those things, and I don't really know where I was going with that. It's just fascinating to see that football isn't this complicated sport. It's just about moving guys around and math and stuff like that.
Yeah, not complicated at all. But I'll be curious if they go back more to a too high safety look kind of later down the line or in the playoffs, so they don't hit those burning shots. But I mean, that's been kind of the way they've been playing all season, switching the scheme up a little bit in that regard. So that'll be interesting. Let's end the show. So we mentioned him, but didn't dive deep. We got in the show with Puka Nacua, who is making history. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's been a long 24 hours, but as of right now, I believe he sits third all time in rookies behind Calvin Johnson and Justin Jefferson. He's only like 140 plus yards away to pass them over, and he has 2 games to do it. And he is second or third all time in receptions. This is for rookies, obviously. So just talk about Puka Nacua and just how impressed you are with this young guy and what he means to this offense, and how surprised you are. And it's great seeing him get his flowers now on primetime after last night.
Yeah, it's funny that everything that we have been saying in the last couple of weeks about the Rams, now finally the national media is catching up to it.
Yeah, finally,
it's gotta be on primetime apparently for people to pay attention. Yeah, and I understand that, but I mean, CJ Stroud missing the last couple of games. You gotta think that Puka Nacua has got to be the top contender for Rookie of the Year. And coming from where he came from in the draft, has there been a Rookie of the Year that has come from those later rounds? I mean, even remotely close. And
look back.
Justin Jefferson. You think about Justin Jefferson and Calvin Johnson; those guys are first rounders, first rounders. So I think it's amazing, historic, and it's just another testament that the Rams have something to their draft strategy, to their trading away draft capital, to their them picks strategy. It's all phenomenal, and the fact that so many people go look at the receivers that were drafted ahead of him, maybe Tank Dell is having comparable, not even like maybe kind of a close-ish season.
Till he got hurt. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. So, and I think this was the first game where we saw the interplay between just a handful of receivers. Only 4 receivers in this game were catching passes.
Yeah.
That interplay that I wanted to see all season long. I feel like this is probably the best example of what this offense can be. And Puka Nacua is the perfect piece to drop in there from what he does in the blocking game, how fast he is. We've always been comparing him to Robert Woods. He's better than Robert Woods. In a lot of ways. Robert Woods, I'm not taking anything away from him. He's just better. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just a what a amazing surprise. What a great surprise. And going back to what I was saying, it's just the succession plan. Cooper Kupp is going to retire at some point sooner than later, and this is the next guy up. And Rams fans, you should feel great about your organization because they can find a guy like this.
100%. And we'll end with this last thing I'll say, and I don't want to take anything away from Puka Nacua because he deserves everything. He's playing his butt off. I mean, you see his catchability, his escapability, his yards after catch, everything. I mean, that's him. He's doing that. But just to end it with, a shout out to Stafford. When you look at the greatest wide receiver season of all time with Calvin Johnson, his quarterback was Matthew Stafford. When you look at the second greatest wide receiver receiving of all time, that was Cooper Kupp, and his quarterback was Matthew Stafford. And now we're on the verge of seeing the greatest rookie wide receiver season of all time, and his quarterback is Matthew Stafford. So something to be said about who's throwing you the football, who's spinning it, who's finding you open, who's throwing you open, because Matthew Stafford may be better than any quarterback this year. I'm not saying the best quarterback total, but he might be the best quarterback at throwing his receivers open. We saw that touchdown to Marcus Robinson. I mean, there was no window there, and he threw him open to only where he could get it. Great touchdown. So Puka Nacua is the absolute stud. Should be the rookie of the year since CJ Stroud now has been out, especially if he breaks both those records. How do you not give it to him? But Matthew Stafford is the architect behind what he is doing this season, and it's very impressive.
Yeah, I mean, Stafford's having the best year of his career, just from accuracy perspective. He can still make those crazy sidearm throws, no look passes. It's been phenomenal. It's been fun to watch, and we've talked enough about him. He deserves the respect. He's
getting it nationally finally, I think.
Yeah, after this game, finally, right. What about the Saints? Is it that beat the Saints? Oh my God! But I mean, coach of the year, defensive coordinator of the year, is that an award? Sure. Rookie of the year. You could make it a case for offensive player of the year as well. So, I mean, this offense is. This team has just been lots of fun to cover this year, and it's going to be a fun ride the next month or so.
Absolutely, been a lot of fun. So big win for the Rams, 6th seed in the playoff as it stands. That is all the time we got. Everyone have a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays with all of your loved ones, friends, and family. We will be back on probably Tuesday or Wednesday. Obviously, Christmas Day is Monday, so we are also going to take some time off. Much deserved for Skinny T here. So we'll be back Tuesday, Wednesday, talking, the upcoming game against the Giants. So everyone have a blessed weekend. Thanks for hanging out with us. Big win for the Rams. For Ryan Skinny T Anderson, I'm Ryan Dyrud. This has been the Rams Skinny. Make sure to check us out on LA Football Network, LAFBnetwork.com, Rams LAFB on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, anywhere you go to get your socials. Thanks all. Take care.